This story begins with the fact that it was a normal day outside, sunny weather. A lot of people were cleaning at this time on the street and doing their job. Among them was one girl with beautiful bright red hair. At some point, two friends approached her who were passing by and smelled the stink. They started looking at this girl and calling her dirty, laughing at her for smelling bad. These girls were very arrogant and accused her of the fact that it was because of her that there was a bad smell in the street. Also, they started to say that next to her it feels like they are near the garbage can. The girl they insulted didn't understand how they could say such things about her. From what they took, that it stinks so much from her, because she knew perfectly well that this could not be. She may have looked untidy, but every day this girl was thoroughly washed so there can be no smell. Turned out she had to clean the streets because she was abandoned as a child and not married like everyone else. That's the reason she had to become a maid. Her cleaning life started to change. From the moment she turned 17, the waist began to be visible, and the neckline and hips were more magnificent. In general, the girl began to become more attractive, and her later life looked like this. Of course, she didn't clean the streets anymore because she decided to do something else, because she was too beautiful for a maid, and always dreamed of shining and performing on stage. And when she turned 18, the girl became a dancer. But this time was very difficult. The body was tired from hard training, and there was no time to sleep. It was only worth complaining. They were very punished for it. So I had to wear a long suit to cover my tracks. I had to endure it all for the sake of a source of income. So her opinion about being tired or not liking something didn't matter. End up wearing a ton of makeup on my face every day. She entertained aristocrats, and after some time she managed to become the most famous dancer in the capital. The men wanted to win the attention of the girl and gave a lot of jewelry. She was truly the girl absolutely all men wanted to get, and many times tried to confess their love, but this did not cause the beauty of any emotions. But it wasn't that she didn't like a man. It was that she didn't know how to love and trust someone. All she did was just smile beautifully back. That's all she could give them in return, and none of them could interest. Gradually, she became very proud and felt superior to everyone else, so no one could win her heart. In addition, the girls were very jealous of her beauty and constantly gossiped about it. But these rumors did not bother her at all, because she knew that they gossip only because they do not like themselves and consider them less attractive. And that's just their problem. Red-haired beauty was very tired of communicating with them. There were times when she thought there was no such man who could win her heart. Because of this, she has already lost hope that she could ever fall in love. But she did not know that such people really exist. At some point, an incredible handsome man came to the event. He was noticed by every girl around. This man is like an ideal. It was impossible to imagine someone more beautiful than him. Even the girl paid attention to him. Yes, even she stared at him. Among the noble families of the empire, the Esteban family occupies the highest position. Everyone knows his name, and he has appeared abruptly at events organized for ordinary people. And it seems that this type of men attracts a girl. All this time, it was difficult for her to take her eyes off him. Although this rarely happens, and she tried her best to hide it, because she was not used to falling in love with someone. Usually it happened the other way around, but this time, apparently, she's in the place of a person who fell in love. The moment their eyes met, the girl was embarrassed and had strange feelings, and the heart began to beat even harder. It seems that there is a man who can attract the attention of such an impregnable beauty, who has always been very proud and is used to the attention of men whom she has always cared about. The girl even admitted to herself that she apparently fell in love with this stranger. After that day, she wanted to meet him again, but he is a duke. People who won't even look at her, but still she really wanted to see him, so she began to figure out how to do it. Surprisingly, the girl did not find a place for herself and constantly thought about him. This is not like her at all. One day she was sitting at work, and someone urgently called her, and if Sally only knew what awaits her next. It turned out that people came who brought good news. The Duke wants to see her. She even at first thought that she might have been confused with someone, and could not believe what she had just heard. She was worried about only one thing for which the Duke wished to meet her. But it doesn't matter right now, because she needs to clean up urgently. She spent all the money to dress up from head to toe, to look like a luxurious aristocrat. The long-awaited moment came. She arrived at the meeting place. And yet why does the Duke need a meeting with her? And how could he even notice this lady in a crowd of people then? Everyone around who noticed that the girl was walking towards him started gossip. because they were very jealous of her. And finally, she comes to him. He stood behind the luxurious door. The girl even barely stood on her feet due to excitement, and lost control of her emotions for a while. After that, she greeted the Duke and introduced herself. By the way, she had a very beautiful name, Salia. Every minute she was there made her more and more nervous, because she is not a noblewoman, but an ordinary girl who used to sweep the streets. They looked into each other's eyes for a very long time and didn't say anything. The girl even thought that the Duke had changed his mind about talking to her, so she was silent. Due to the fact that she no longer controlled herself, she began to say the first thing that came to mind, and offered to dance with her. Unfortunately, that's all she could say. And then imagined how stupid it looked from the outside. Therefore, she already imagined how he kicked her out, but suddenly he also gives his hand in response. She definitely did not expect this. What happened was made even stranger by the fact that at that moment, the Duke didn't say a single word, just held out his hand and made it clear that he didn't mind dancing together at all. After that, they spent an unforgettable night together. They both got incredible pleasure from each other's bodies. Every second was special and unforgettable. His touch drove the girl crazy, and she forgot about all the problems that were up to this point. It felt like this night lasted forever. All sensations were so pleasant that I wanted to feel this every day. About this, the girl could not even dream, and even thought that it was impossible to get his attention. But something brought her to tears because she was aware of a very important point, which cannot be avoided because it is really serious. She was happy from the night spent with him, but the thought that tomorrow she would have to part with him was morally destroying her. Of course, the girl did not want this most of all, because she dreams of living with such a man all her life. In the morning, she perfectly understood that it was unworthy to find next to such a man, and had to leave him. And as much as I don't want this night to last forever, you have to come to terms with the fact that they can't be together. At least that's what Sally thought. It seemed to her that she was just an ordinary one-night stand dancer. And as soon as the sun rises, she needs to disappear. The only thing she dreamed of was to be with him for a little while. Salia would give anything in the world to repeat everything that happened between them at night. It's impossible to imagine how she felt about having to say goodbye to this. But maybe it's for the best. She tried to convince herself of this and try not to think about the bad. But if she only knew what he would soon be able to offer her. On the one hand, it may seem humiliating, but on the other, exactly what she needs. He invited her to become his mistress! Nobody really expected this. Could it be that Salia was able to hook him with something, and he feels something for her? But was he really ready to do this to his wife? Her answer just depends on if she's willing to be a secondary girl and not come first, hiding behind his wife and living out the rest of his life in someone's shadow, and catch the suspicious looks of others. But at the same time, she does not want to lose him for anything and leave forever. Therefore, she had no other option but to agree, and go to all these difficulties in the future for his sake. But she did not even imagine what a terrible life awaits her next. This is not life, but real torment. Her main mistake was love for him, and the fact that she did not know what she signed up for. As a result, the girl died at a young age when she was 20 years old. Although that life was unbearable, she had nothing to lose. But suddenly waking up, she realized that she had returned to a time when she was not yet a dancer. And it looks like this is not a dream but a chance. So that this time to live life differently, and not to die without a loved one with a terrible life of a mistress. And in no case to allow everything that happened in a past life. And most importantly, do not try to fall in love with him again. Well, you have to start everything from the standard of living that was before. Be someone's maid and do dirty and hard work. Most importantly, this girl knows that she can achieve anything if she wants to. If you try and believe in yourself, everything will definitely work out. The main thing is not to make the mistakes of the past, but first you have to earn some money and endure humiliating treatment from your boss, who is constantly unhappy with something and yells at subordinates all day. So you need to get over it and just make money, because there is no other option. You have to wash someone's dirty things and hear reproaches from the authorities. In addition, if you do your job poorly, you can be left without dinner, such conditions at which the girl worked. Because of this, there was a lack of sleep and constant fatigue and sometimes back pain. She already dreamed of earning at least something, and quickly quit this terrible job that can drive you crazy. On one of her usual working days, the girl decided to tidy up one of the rooms, but it was dark there, and she decided to open the curtains. and suddenly she heard someone's voice that this should not be done. But who was it? Is it some thief or some stranger? The girl turned around and saw some stranger, although she had never seen her here before. But why has she been sitting in this room in the dark all this time? She looked very sad. It was clear that something had happened to her. But the girl asked to clean it up a little, because she had an order. In response, that stranger said that she wanted to be here alone, to which the girl told her that due to the fact that today is an important concert, she cannot miss cleaning. As it turned out, this lady with purple hair was supposed to perform at it, just as the rich guests come, and the director loves them so much. Looks like a new dancer. She's only been here recently. But what happened to her? At first she was delighted with what she was doing, and even over time fans appeared. But at some point, everything changed. Something began to frighten her, but she did not tell anything for a long time. Wondered what she meant, and what might scare her. The fact is that some crazy man began to pester her, who waits all day near the theater, and after the concert, he began to pursue him. Despite the fact that the girl had already refused him several times, but he still didn't listen to her and continued to chase her. Because of this, she cannot live in peace and is forced to constantly hide. But she is already waiting for the moment when she can deal with him. She finished telling her story and realized that she could scare the child with an emotional story, and these stories. After that, she felt ashamed because she thought maybe the girl was absolutely not interested in it. While this may be a lesson and an example for her, when you think about it, there are such abnormal people everywhere. But you should always try to protect yourself and take care of your safety. But if you start helping her with this, you can attract too much attention. Although it may be better not to interfere in other people's affairs. Meanwhile, someone complained about Sally and gave another reason for the boss to yell at her. This woman constantly complained that because of Sally, every day some kind of trouble, and decided to go somewhere with her to punish the girl for her mistakes. The fact that the girl will now be punished made everyone around very happy. They were just waiting for this. But at some point that girl came out of the room and called Sally, and decided to help her in this situation because she is really very sorry. After that, she began to hug a little girl and praise for something. Everyone around wondered how this beautiful lady could touch such a dirty girl. It turns out that the girl, after talking with her, got rid of that abnormal man, and was very grateful to the little girl for listening to her then. After that, promised that she would always be able to help her if needed. Although she had already helped those that she saved from the evil boss. Just the girl needed help, and she asked to be a personal maid for this lovely lady. The girl no longer had an option because it was no longer possible to endure bullying from the authorities, and if that lady agrees to the request, work will become much more pleasant. If, nevertheless, she becomes her personal and maid, then they will have to live together. Of course, that pretty lady agreed, and was glad of such an offer, so they decided to quickly go to the authorities and get an agreement. From now on, the girl's life can dramatically improve because she will no longer tolerate those people who constantly insult her. Also, her savior turned out to be such a good person that she warned everyone else that if they even lay a finger or insult her assistant, they will regret it. No one expected that someone would want to stand up for this girl, because everyone thought that she did not deserve anything like that. After that girl ordered everyone who was idle to immediately do their work and not stare at them. Now she's the one to show these cleaners how frustrating it is to be treated disrespectfully and offended. From that moment, the justice that the red-haired beauty was waiting for was finally arrived. Girls were very surprised that they were humiliated and put in their place for the first time. After all, they used to be able to afford to treat others, but this time they experienced it for themselves. It will be a good lesson for them that you should never humiliate innocent people because you will always have to pay for it. But they still decided that they would not stop mocking the girl. After this, they wanted to take revenge on her because they wanted to be in her place. Meanwhile, Sally felt more comfortable and at ease than ever, and finally enjoyed being treated well. Even though she is in the role of a maid, but this girl is much more pleasant to work with her. She even offers to always have dinner with her and talk about something as if she were friends. During lunch, the girl said that she finally solved the problem with that man. She made sure that his wife understood everything and punished him. Sally was very proud of her, because this is the only way to deal with such terrible husbands, and wives should know the whole truth and let the cheaters answer for what they deserve. For lunch, she cooked a very tasty soup. It was cooked with love, because it's always nice to do something for people who appreciate it. who are not looking for a reason to scold or insult for something. All of a sudden, Sally said that she had one more small request for Mistress. It turned out that she was tormented by one thought that she would have to become a dancer, and she did not want to. To which that girl asked, "Has someone already offered this to her, because she is just her maid?" Sally replied that since she would be with her all the time, the directors might notice her and suggest that she become a dancer as well. But her mistress laughed and took it as a joke, because why would the director take a dancer like her? Suddenly, the girl seriously thought about it and carefully began to look at the face of the maid, to see her beauty up close. After that, she noticed that Sally is really attractive, and if you look at her, she is really beautiful. Although in such clothes it is difficult to see something and see her beauty. The lady was surprised that such a beauty is hidden behind such terrible clothes, and if she is dressed in beautiful clothes, she will be irresistible and chic. It was incomprehensible to her how one could hide such beauty, not take care of herself, and wear such ugly clothes. That's all. It spoils her appearance very much, but everything could be completely different. Suddenly, the lady realizes that there are no children in this place who would be here of their own free will. Therefore decided to agree to Sally's request, and offered to hide her well. But for this, she will be obliged to help if necessary. Sally felt great relief, because now she could live in peace, not falling into anyone's eyes, would not become a dancer, and accordingly, would not meet the Duke. After that, they talked a little, and the girl saw that her assistant could do a lot of things, although she did not expect that she could read, and also knows how to use cutlery correctly, and even taught her mistress this. And the most amazing thing is that Sally taught her several tricks to make her movements look much smoother and more beautiful. 4 years have passed since then. Sally has become even more feminine and beautiful during this time. We'll have to sew in clothes again because the waist has become even narrower. What if she hears that the lady is calling her? She had some kind of invitation in her hands, so she called rather an assistant to open it together. It was clear that this invitation was somehow special. It is even made of a different material to the touch, more pleasant than all those that came before. So they eagerly wanted to see who sent it. They didn't even think what person this letter came from. It would be better if Sally didn't even open it, because this letter is from the Marquis of Serjas. And yet what was written there? What could he suggest or say in this letter? There was an invitation to the reception where Sally first met Duke Esteban. The lady eagerly wanted to know what was written there, but she could not read it on her own, because she had not yet learned how to do it, to which her assistant said that this is an invitation from the Marquis Serras. Event is scheduled in a week, so there is time to think and prepare. Weeks was enough. You just need to start preparing, because there will be many respected people besides the Marquis. Due to the fact that her assistant knew what was going on there, she asked her to listen, and think maybe you shouldn't go there and accept the offer. The assistant told her mistress that if she went there, she would definitely meet the Duke, and, like Sally, fall in love with him at first sight. And as a result, this love will bring her suffering even worse than death. But it seems that she did not succeed in convincing her mistress, and she was determined to, because she could not refuse such a chance. But she still does not know what a big mistake she is making, and at the same time reassures the assistant that everything will be fine, and you should not worry about it. The main thing was to look so chic in order to catch the eyes of others. After she was ready, she went to leave for the event, and said that she would return late, so she could not wait. Sally tried to convince her many times, and asked not to go there, but she did not want to listen to any. Therefore, I just saw off the mistress, in the hopes that everything would be fine with her, although I doubted it very much. Sally couldn't sleep, and was looking forward to her mistress. For her, the main thing was that she returned in a good mood, and then she comes back late at night. The girl heard someone open the door, wondered if everything went well at that event and what they talked about. So Sally sat silently, waiting to hear what Mrs. Well, for some reason she was wet. Her assistant asked what happened. Did something unpleasant happen? To which the girl said that she seemed to have fallen in love. What to expect? Everything happened exactly as Sally experienced in her time, so she was not even surprised. Since that day, Sarah has changed a lot, and did not even want to accept any new letters and invitations. Ceased to speak, from the pretext of illness, due to the fact that she could not think of anything other than her beloved. And also all day long she constantly looked out the window, and in her eyes you could see that she missed someone, and even stopped wanting to eat and drink tea. Said that there was no appetite, The food seemed not at all tasty and did not attract. At some point a man came in. He obviously wanted to say something to Sarah. Duke Esteban's servants have arrived as the Duke wishes to meet her. Sally remembers this man very well. He had the same phrases and facial expressions. And he will also be constantly dissatisfied with something. And until that time, he absolutely did not like externally. He left and ordered Sarah to immediately gather to visit him. Such a respected person should never be kept waiting. Surprisingly, but everything that happens is exactly the same. It looks like something that Sally experienced a long time ago. Nothing has changed since then. And even at this moment, when the mistress is in love, the girl is still trying to stop her and save her from a terrible fate. Because if she goes there, she will regret it after a while. The only problem was that Sarah was madly in love, and it was almost impossible to dissuade her from such a mistake that could very much ruin her whole future life. But Sally could not even suspect that she would now learn from Mistress. One day Sarah was crying very hard and saying she didn't want him or anyone else to. Touched her when the girl heard this. She did not understand what was happening. Now everything is clear. People Sarah is in love with is not Duke Esteban. But who? In the meantime, another shocking news will be revealed soon. The Duke did not know how to proceed further and what to do. But what happened to him? Turns out then, Sarah did not go to the event that he invited her and ignored the letter. So he decided to force her into his office. But who was Sarah going to see that day? All this time, the Duke was very offended by the fact that his proposal was ignored. But he still decided to send another letter and insisted that it was an important meeting. Since he cannot tolerate rejection, he has to get what he wants in this way. He was ready to write at least 5 letters. But why does he need this meeting so much? Is he looking for another mistress? Or maybe he just can't stand being alone and needs the attention of women, so resorts to such methods and sends letters to invite someone who agrees. There was nothing else for him to do, so he acted in this way. In addition, he was refused a request for a divorce. Probably his wife is just taking revenge in this way, after what he did. Meanwhile, the girls have already arrived and one of them is ready to go to the meeting. Since Mrs. Sarah was very reluctant to go to him, her assistant offered to go instead of her. Because it was believed that this was her fate, and it would not be possible to avoid meeting in this life with the Duke, no matter how much one would like it. Sarah tried her best to convince her that maybe she shouldn't take such a risk for her sake, and she should go to this meeting herself. But her assistant bet that it is not difficult for her. Besides, she has already been through it anyway, and will not allow her mistress to live the same. Sarah had to live her happy life, and her assistant was ready to do everything in her power for this. After all, she could not allow her to become another girl who would be used by this tyrant, and tried to convince that everything will go well. The main thing is that the mistress will be safe. Although meeting with him is a difficult test for Sally, she could not send Mrs. Sarah there in any case. Sally simply took this meeting as a fate from which she could not run away. And besides, it's time to go out. They've been talking for so long. Sally tuned in and was ready to go. But her mistress felt that perhaps she was doing wrong, and she herself had to go there. Offered several times to change my mind and do everything as it should be. But you can't escape fate, said her assistant. So don't worry about what happens. Sally was convinced that after all she would not be able to avoid meeting him, although it might be possible to make sure that she did not have to suffer because of him. At this moment, the lady suggested that she wait here nearby and not leave home to return there together. The assistant immediately refused because it was cold outside and she could get sick, so it was better for Sarah to go home. After that, the girl began to convince the mistress that she was not to blame for anything, and that she deserved a good and safe life, and also that I need to blame myself, because initially this letter was supposed to go to Sally, but after these words, the cop said that she did not understand at all what she was talking about, because her assistant did not tell that she should have been in the place of the mistress, and the letter should have come to her. But due to the fact that the girl decided to change her fate, Sarah turned out to be in her place. But still, despite the fact that the girl tried her best to avoid meeting him, she failed, and eventually goes to him. But before that she thanked Sarah for everything, because she really did a lot for her, and wished that the mistress was happy all her life, and did not waste time on people like the Duke. Sarah has left. It's time to go to meet this tyrant. But this time Sally had a plan, and if she can't escape fate, she will change it. Because she did not want to live the terrible life that she had lived before again. and was willing to do things differently in any way. Before entering, the girl was asked if her name was really Sarah, and asked to raise her hood. But she asked what it was for because she didn't want to do it, because it seemed disrespectful to her. So she answered that guy that she would take off her hood only in front of the Duke, but he said that this was done for security purposes. He needed to see the face and search everyone who would go to him. At this, the girl asked if the Duke is so weak that the girl can pose a threat to him. But it was she who heard an incomprehensible answer, and the fact that this is just an order that he follows. And yet the girl insisted on her own and did not take off her hood. That guard did not understand what was happening to this woman, why she was so self-confident. Something is definitely wrong with her, he suggested, and yet led her to the Duke. But first he warned that if a girl says something wrong to him, he will immediately kick her out and will not talk further. Sally, as Sarah, replied that she understood everything and would treat him with respect, as expected. After that, they knocked on his door to enter, and the assistant said that a girl came to him, to which the Duke replied that it was possible to pass, and the girl remembered this voice again. It was impossible to confuse it with something. He was very abrupt and rude as usual. After that, I didn't really want to go into his room. Because of this, the girl began to worry a little because she remembered what she had to endure in the past. And I understood that if the course of events did not change, I would have to live again and live the most terrible days a second time in a second life. But there is something, and this time it did not give calmness, she hoped, if only not to fall in love with him again. As then, many years ago, in order not to fall into the trap, you need to focus on not agreeing to his request and remember where it can lead. Every time his face seems cute. Before entering, she promised herself this time not to fall in love with him and to control herself. Because if this is not done, you will have to suffer for the rest of your life. It seems that this meeting will last forever, but in any way you need to pass this test, no matter how difficult it may be. At this point, some guy asked why the girl didn't greet the Duke, and it wouldn't hurt to take off the hood to maintain etiquette. Still, he did not calm down and continued to stand on his own. Is it so important to them that she does this? Or do they doubt that Sarah is really in front of them, and yet they had a right to it? Because the girl is visiting them, you must follow their rules. But at that moment, things didn't go according to plan. She took off her hood and said that she was actually a servant of Lady Sarah. Is this such a plan? And what does she want to achieve by this? She also noticed that this time she is not so worried as then. After this, the Duke asked his assistant, "Where's the woman that was supposed to come?" This time, he became even more uncomfortable with the fact that he was again deceived and thrown. The assistant said that he would try to resolve this issue, although before that he carefully checked everything and made sure that Sarah really arrived, and said that perhaps this was some kind of mistake. Lord Duke no longer knew what to do in this situation because he was constantly ignored by Sarah. And at that moment the girl said, "After all, didn't the Duke need an excuse not to spend the night with the dancer?" To which the Duke asked, "What did she just say?" And all because he hoped that no one noticed his adventures with mistresses. But he was very much mistaken, because people had only one topic for discussion lately. Everyone was talking about the fact that the Count was still divorced, because his wife did not tolerate such a humiliating attitude from her husband, and the fact that he fell in love with another caused her to leave him. Moreover, everyone knew that because of his mistress, his wife became so ashamed that she could no longer appear in public. Because any woman will feel terrible and look for flaws in herself after her husband leaves her as a young girl. Everyone was interested to know who he traded his wife for, and is this girl worth it to destroy someone's family? Because she could not even imagine what a woman had to endure, which her husband left after so many years of living together. All these rumors were a secret from the Duke, and he had no idea how many people were discussing him about this. But the girl knew it, and could put pressure on him with this topic. Therefore she felt confident enough and did not let everyone around her know that she was worried. Because of this, the Duke could not object to her and argue with her. Sally told him that rumor had it that the Duke wasn't the type to invite a dancer over just out of interest or curiosity. To which the Duke replied that she judges him only by useless rumors. The girl replied that it was not so because he sent them a carriage with the Esteban family coat of arms. And not one man who is able to have a mistress will not call a dancer so openly, especially a married person of such status. So what the Duke needs not just a woman for one night stand. The girl asked if it was true that he wanted to start a rumor that he was in a special relationship with a dancer, and asked him to answer this assumption honestly. None of them thought that the girl would be so unusual and therefore be able to think about. Duke asked to continue to say everything that she thinks and suspects. Girl said only one thing. She is more suitable for this role than Mistress Sarah, and explained why he should listen to her, because the rumor that the Duke fell in love with the maid dancer is much more effective than the fact that he fell in love with the dancer herself. The Duke immediately understood that she knew what she was talking about, and that there was logic and meaning in her words, although she was really a little cocky and self-confident. After that, she asked if she herself had thought of this before or could someone help. She replied that she herself thought about it in order to suggest such. He realized that this girl is not stupid, and also that she really understands something. And also he was wondering why she acts so relaxed in front of the aristocrats, and is not at all nervous like any other person. The only thing that bothered him was her appearance. It was a little unkempt, and her clothes weren't fresh enough. If someone sees her appearance, no one will believe that she is his mistress. Therefore, it was necessary to do something with this and put her in order, because there are features in her that can be emphasized and made of a real beauty. Besides, she has such a beautiful hair color, which will help to attract all the attention of others around her with the Duke. She urgently needs to be sent to the shower and buy some things, and it is desirable to do this as quickly as possible, ordered the Duke. But after that, he asked what she needs from him. She didn't just offer him help for sure. She needs something, and indeed she knew exactly what she wanted. Therefore immediately demanded after the end of the transaction to give her freedom. He asked what she had in mind, to which the girl replied that after she fulfilled everything that she promised, she could go anywhere, and he would not hold her. But he was very surprised, because she could demand fame, money, jewelry, and even the earth, for some reason did not begin to demand the name of the Duchess, and all in order to simply then go free. Sally said that she did not need all this. She only agreed to work for freedom after the deal, and asked to fulfill only one request. The Duke agreed and said that later he could go wherever he wanted. The girl thanked him and said that she would do her best. In the meantime, I was glad that I was able to negotiate with him and secure my freedom in the future. After making sure that the girl knew about his plans, he was able to tell what he needed. He needed a fake mistress to divorce his wife, Eliza Esteban. Eliza Esteban, Duke's wife, a beautiful and beloved woman, an ideal that combines an angelic appearance and a kind character. But why did the Duke need so many people to think that he had a mistress? Turns out his wife cares a lot about public opinion, and their deal could end then, when her patience runs out and she files for divorce. Sally replied that he was wrong. She would not be offended or offended in the slightest by her appearance. As it turns out later, his wife also has a different fate, so the girl decided to play the role of mistress as well as possible. The Duke was glad that she understood her role and quickly understood why he needed it. Therefore, you need to start as soon as possible, transforming the future of a mistress. First, you need to start with a shower. Sally was a little alarmed because at first she didn't understand what it was for, and what does the shower have to do with it? Well, the Duke was surprised and said that it was only to improve her appearance, and asked to understand him correctly. They will not have to sleep together. It will be enough just to pretend to be lovers. But since today is the first night when the Duke falls in love with his mistress, they needed to be in the same room all night. But for this she needs to wash, in order to be pleasant to be in the room with her. Sally said that the bed is not needed. She will sleep on the couch. Went straight to bed after that and said good night. This act was a bit misunderstood by the Duke. Doesn't she want to wash and refresh her body? And thought she was acting bold or stupid because her behavior is rather ambiguous. But all this is only because the girl can no longer treat him normally due to the fact that she had to go through in a past life. So she tries to keep her distance. While she slept, the Duke constantly looked at her and thought, why did she need to help him at all? Because she did not owe him anything. And before him, this is a profitable partnership. It remains to be hoped that because of this there will be no attachment to each other, because it is quite possible and should be avoided as much as possible. And everything that happened after that should remain a secret forever, because sometimes you need to give free rein to your desires. And if you don't do this, you can stay all your life without pleasure. And what she really wants, between them, true feelings were revealed, and they did not hide their desires. Everything happened sincerely, because it became impossible to hold back. They both experienced feelings that can't be described in words. They wanted to enjoy each other forever, and also had a desire to do it every day, because at that moment the emotions and sensations were so vivid that all other thoughts and problems that were up to that moment went out of my head. Everything was fine until one moment. It was a dream. It is impossible to believe after having experienced such emotions as if in real life, because it was so realistic and good that the mere thought that it was all in a dream is very insulting. It cannot but upset. It was very hard to come to terms with the fact that it was all not real, so it's better to try to forget, no matter how hard it was. In addition, this cannot happen in any way in real life, because the girl knows perfectly well what kind of person he is, and that it is better not to mess with him, because otherwise, you can be very sorry. And even if sometime there are hints of something like this, it's better to think 100 times, and remember what you had to go through in a past life, and the desire will immediately disappear. Therefore, it is better to forget it like a dream, and begin to prepare for the fact that the servants will soon come. After all, they too must be sure that they are lovers with the Duke. They immediately started thinking about what they need to do and how to behave, because the maid will soon come to clean the room. Since the maids working for aristocrats are very quick-witted, they only have to look at the bed. They immediately understand whether the owner slept well, and with whom. So something urgently needs to be done with the bed, because it does not show that there could be a hot night here. The Duke said that the girl was really right, and asked what they should do in this situation, so that it was believable, and it could be seen that they really slept together all night. Sally asked if he was comfortable. Get into bed and start tossing and turning to make the appearance of a wrinkled bed and linens. It seemed a little strange to him, but he understood that this is a really good idea, and it is worth listening to the girl. This was done for a reason, but in order to leave the smells of their bodies on the bed linen and blanket, so Duke A must first turn around after him. Sally herself. The Duke began to understand that everything that the girl offers him is really very correct and should work. Without her, he would hardly have thought of this. Before they could finish their business, someone knocked on the door and apologized for disturbing. But they wanted to do everything they had planned before someone arrived, and apparently they didn't have time, although it's not too late to fix everything. It was Masa, his wife's maid, but usually she is busy with something else, and does not come at such a time to the Duke. It must have been Eliza, his wife, sent her to check. The maid said that his wife was wondering if he slept well last night, or if something bothered him, in which case Masa could do whatever was required for his comfort. The Duke now clearly understood that his wife simply ordered this maid to monitor him and come as often as possible to make sure that nothing new happened. Sally suggested that it would be best to send her back. He did not listen to her and did his own thing, so he allowed the maid to enter the room. I wonder why he did it. Does he have any idea to make his wife even more jealous? Meanwhile, the maid entered the room and greeted the Duke. And of course something pissed her off. Apparently that was the plan. The Duke did everything so that the maid saw what she was supposed to. In the meantime, she did not like it. In addition, she saw a girl in a bed in which the Duke did not allow his wife to sleep and even lie. Performance from the best actors in the world begins, starring the mistress of the Duke, as well as her beloved the Duke himself, the author of the play, the husband of Eliza Esteban. He is also the Duke. Oh, Sally, what's bothering you? Are you in pain? Yes, beloved, back, legs, everything in the décolleté area, and in general the whole body is terribly tired. Ooh, I must have worn you out a lot last night. Yes, darling, it was hot. The girl lies almost naked in his bed, and pretends with all her might that they are lovers. The plan was a success. And yet the Duke cannot understand one thing. Recently it was unpleasant for a girl to lie with him in the same bed, and now she is so masterfully fulfilling her role. How difficult it is to understand. But despite that, she does a great job. She seemed to have been rehearsing this scene all her life, and prepared responsibly every day before they met. Her acting skills left no doubt that there was great love between her and the Duke. They acted so well pretending to be lovers that they even imagined for a second if they could actually be in love with each other. But the maid did not react to this in any way, although they thought that she would literally tear everything she sees now. But it only seemed to them that she didn't care. In fact, she was very shocked and angry that he allowed this girl a lot because he usually treated his wife much worse. It remains only to wait for action from his wife or some hints. At this point, the maid decided to leave the room so as not to embarrass them by pretending everything was fine. when all of a sudden Sally decided not to stop there and asked to bring a cup of warm tea. After that, she said that her voice sat down because of the Duke. How much it angered her, it was impossible to imagine and describe in words. But she said that now she would bring everything as soon as possible and smiled sweetly at the girl. After that, she left very quickly and slammed the door hard. After that, it became clear that the plan worked. Sally thought it was superfluous to ask her to bring tea, and because of this, she apologized to the Duke, said what she thought. It would be better and more believable. But everything has already been done, and it remains to wait for the reaction of the wife. It only takes time and patience. Sally tried to say that in normal life she would not touch him. She only did it out of need, and asked for forgiveness. But chances are the Duke liked it and didn't mind her touch at all. After that, whoever they saw continued to play the script, and convince everyone that they are together. It was certainly hard, but on the other hand, there is no other choice. You need to do your job. Gradually, she even got used to it, and inspired herself that they were really together. All the staff noticeably began to notice the changes, and assume that everything is really so. No one could understand why she hooked the Duke because he is so impregnable, and in such a short period of time he fell in love with someone. In addition to that girl who was nothing of herself and was an ordinary maid in the past. This only gave rise to discussions. Since there was no time yesterday to get to know each other, that guy introduced himself and said that he was the butler of this house, and would be happy to do whatever Sally orders. He seemed very friendly and nice, but it's too early to draw conclusions without knowing the person. But still, they tried to be on good terms with each other so that there would be no problems between the butler and her, because they would have to work together for a long time and see each other every day. Therefore, it will be better to communicate well with the staff and not be too hard on her. You never know what will happen in the future. It is better not to quarrel with anyone. At some point, the girl remembered what happened yesterday and asked for forgiveness for deceiving him then. He said that it's okay, he forgot about it a long time ago, so you can read that nothing happened. Moreover, it no longer matters. At some point, the butler said that before he could show her to the room, she had to go to one more place, to the room of the mistress of this house, Elisa Esteban. Everything becomes even more interesting and unpredictable every minute. Came at the same time the most terrible and strangest moment. Because the fact that the mistress meets his wife is initially a little incomprehensible. But apparently there are such rules. The butler said that she would still have to get to know her, because they would definitely meet on the palace grounds. So it's better to get to know her right away, to avoid misunderstandings in the future. Maybe there is some logic to this. Now Sally will have to maintain a good relationship with the wife of her so-called lover, as much as she would not like it. Her butler began to convince the girl that I had nothing to worry about, because it was just a greeting. But nothing can be done. They have already arrived and are ready to enter. But before that, the butler knocked and said that he had brought Mrs. Sally. After being allowed to enter, the girl became more and more nervous, because she did not know how the Duke's wife would react to her. After all, there is a very small chance that they will remain on good terms, and since the girl is already in her house, a meeting in the future would be unavoidable. Eliza was already ready to greet the guests, and she met Sally quite nicely. They looked at each other for a while, and got used to the surroundings. Sally went out of her way to treat her with respect and keep a low profile around her. Surprisingly, the Duke's wife communicated well enough with the girl and asked to take care of him, because she could not cope alone. What she meant by this was still unclear. Also, the woman told the girl that her manners leave much to be desired, and there is much to learn. After that, she asked where she came from, to which the girl replied that she came from the capital lane. She was not even ashamed to talk about it, and that she used to work as a maid in an alley not far from here. This revelation surprised the woman. She imagined what a difficult childhood the girl had, and sympathized with this, and said that after such a hard life, somehow the girl managed to get here. How interesting it turned out. And if the girl didn't know what was really going on, she would believe that this woman was really sincere. But now she knows the true meaning of these words, and they meant that Sally would not stay here for a long time. Eliza should take care of it properly, but still had to look grateful and continue to talk nicely. A little more time passed, and this woman said that now the girl can be free, since they already got to know each other enough and saw each other. I wonder what Eliza will do now. After all, She didn't just call her husband's mistress for another reason and communicated with her so well. It was clearly not just the woman called her assistant. She must have already had some kind of plan. The assistant said that she listens carefully and is ready to do everything that the mistress orders her to. Eliza asked if Sally was really that sloppy. That maid replied that she really had constantly disheveled hair. Besides, she had just come here with absolutely no makeup and did not take care to look good in the presence of mistress. After that, the lady thought about how the Duke could pay attention to such an untidy girl, and began to guess that she was not the one for whom everyone takes her. She wanted to make sure that she was right, and eventually get rid of her, because there was no way the Duke could fall in love with her. She knew that something was clearly wrong here, and seems to have begun to guess that in this way the Duke wanted his wife to begin to feel shame and file for divorce. After that, Eliza asked if she had already been assigned a maid, to which the assistant replied that she did not yet have a maid, to which the mistress asked me to let her know when this would happen and she would be assigned her own maid. Since then, she constantly thought that since they had a dirty insect, it should be destroyed immediately. After all, there is no place for such people in the palace, and people like her have no right to enter the threshold to their home, especially as her husband's mistress. Came the next day. Sally by this time was already comfortable in the palace and enjoyed all the amenities that were provided to her. She especially liked to take a warm shower in the morning and enjoy the beautiful view from her window. If not for all these circumstances, she would want to live in such a life, because she never experienced such pleasure from life as she did here in the palace. And at some point someone came into her room. It was a girl who introduced herself as her assistant. Her name was Daisy. In the girl's eyes, she looked like a child. This assistant decided to prepare morning tea for her mistress, for which the girl was very thankful, because no one had done this for her before. At that moment, she felt like a real princess, for whom everyone does what she wants. But after a few minutes, Sally began to suspect that this assistant was sent to her by the wife of the Duke to ruin the girl's life with her help. Sally asked where she was told to pour boiling water, on her body or somewhere nearby, or how else she wants to harm her with her presence. The girl really began to suspect some kind of trick and consider this assistant her enemy, from whom at any moment one can expect a setup. But Daisy wept a little and was frightened by such a question. At first it was not clear who she really was, and whether she was pretending to be someone not who she really was. The girl tried to understand whether it is worth agreeing to such an assistant or not. Suddenly, she remembered that in a past life a similar girl burned her hand with boiling water. And maybe Daisy could have left a scar on her body now if Sally hadn't scared her with her question, who she really is. This was to be expected from the Duke's wife. Apparently she is not going to give up and wants to kick the girl out of the palace by any means. But Sally was not going to give up either. She was ready to fight these stupid games and competitions just to fulfill her contract with the Duke. Therefore pretends not to notice anything and continues to perform his duties. But still she understood that this assistant was sent for a reason. She had a specific task to somehow harm the girl. Daisy tried her best to say that no one sent her, and she did not want to do something bad to her. Sally told her not to worry, and assured her that she wouldn't ask whoever might have sent her about it, and asked if she does as the girl says, she won't have any big problems. But still, despite the words of the assistant, she could not be trusted to the end. She still needs to be checked whether she is completely honest or not. The next day came, as usual. The morning was incredibly warm and beautiful. Meanwhile, the Duke asked the butler how his wife reacted to meeting his mistress, to which the butler replied that after the meeting, the woman behaved as usual and made sure that the girl had her own maid. After that, the Duke asked the butler to make sure that no one harmed Sally and take care of her safety, because anything can be expected from Eliza, and asked to be supervised to conduct an examination for the presence of special diseases, then said that he might be free. Everyday events are becoming more interesting, and it is impossible to predict what will happen the next day. I so constantly wanted what you would write, but he couldn't do it. Has lost his mind for the third time. And because of this, it takes a long time, because he constantly worries about his mistress and her relationship with his wife. It was important to him that Sally was safe after they met. At that moment he was no longer interested in anything. It seems that he had an affection for her, which he was so afraid of and did not want. He began to notice that he constantly remembers the girl and thinks about her. These thoughts alarmed him. After all, he was afraid to fall in love with her or just get used to her. Each time he tried to get these thoughts out of his head, But it was difficult to succeed since he sees her very often, and she has become a real part of his life. When suddenly there was a huge trouble, came to his palace, and said that the girl received a very severe burn. It was necessary to call someone for help and immediately help her. The Duke immediately thought that this was the work of his wife. He could not think that she was capable of such a thing, harming a girl with the wrong hands. Mourning, of course, was not at all kind, because this terrible news ruined the morning for almost everyone. The doctor had already come to the girl, and the Duke asked him how it could have happened, because it was definitely done by someone on purpose. The doctor replied that he should ask how this happened. The burn was really very strong. The liquid was almost boiled, and moreover, a large volume. But fortunately everything is in order with the body. Only the hand was injured, and the situation is not very critical. But you will have to wait a long time until everything heals. Such a burn does not go away quickly. Those who came up with such revenge counted on this. After the doctor examined the patient, he can be free, because he can't help with anything else. You just need to wait a long time for everything to pass. After they were alone, the Duke asked to tell how it happened. Was it really that maid who did it at the request of his wife? After the conversation, he realized that this woman was definitely up to something. But the girl said that her plan failed. She did everything to get the news of the burn to her, so the Duke can be pleased. To which he asked, was there any point in playing along with her? The girl said that of course he was. A person who is confident in the success of his plan calms down for a while. And it was done to buy a little time, although it won't work for a long time. Sally said that it doesn't matter anymore. It was done in order not to waste her strength on her and get some rest, because if you make her angry and make it clear that she is not succeeding, she will create even more trouble for the girl. Meanwhile, the Duke was surprised that his mistress was not afraid of the attack, but rather turned him to her advantage. The doctor will be visiting his new patient for some more time because a burn could be dangerous, so don't neglect the treatment, the Duke said. But for this, he will have to give him what he wants, because he is not one of those who like to get involved in such situations. Her lover wondered how she could know him so well. It turns out that she knows him since when she worked in the theater, because he is a very famous person. To which the Duke replied that she suspiciously knows a lot of things, and asked if she had anything else to say. But she needed that maid who ordered the maid to pour tea on her. Make them meet and discuss something, because she is not going to endure it and turn a blind eye to it. At this time, that maid really wanted to know how the girl was feeling, to make sure that she was ill and she was suffering. After all, this was their goal, to harm her as much as possible on the very first day, so that they had to call doctors and other things like that. Nothing good could be expected from her, because she cooperates with the Duke's wife, and is very ill-disposed against her mistress. Therefore she is ready to harm and hurt her with pleasure when necessary, and help in this matter as much as necessary. She met a doctor on the way, and decided to stop him to ask how the girl was feeling, pretending to be worried about her recovery. She was eager to hear that the girl had serious problems, and it would take a long time to heal the burn. And also she could hardly hold back a smile, so as not to be glad that the doctor came to her today, and everything is too serious. And all the time I imagined how happy the lady would be, because she perfectly fulfilled her request. The only thing that mattered to her was that that mistress leave their palace as soon as possible and never come back again. After this maid, the doctor met his patient and asked him to give him some time to tell her something. After that he approached her and told that he had just seen that shameless maid. She asked him about the health of his patient, and said everything as Sally asked him. After that the maid thought about something and laughed sinisterly. Apparently their plan worked, and the Duke's wife will soon be convinced that they were able to do what they wanted, and they succeeded. And the doctor decided to thank the Duke for now sponsoring the medical center, and this will continue for 10 years, so now he can fully concentrate on his work. But Sally said, don't be thankful. It's a good thing to treat poor people who can't afford to pay for treatment for free. He also said that even though the Duke provided this money, he did it with the help of her. So Dr. Sally is also extremely grateful, as they were a great help to his business. As a result, they communicated very well and were happy to cooperate, because each of them helps each other in their own way, and promised to always help if needed. And of course, just a few hours later, rumors began to spread throughout the palace that the Duke's mistress had a terrible burn, due to the fact that her assistant poured boiling water on her. But what was most surprising to people was that Sally forgave Daisy and made her her personal maid. But they suggested that maybe this was a revenge plan for pouring hot tea on her. At some point, they noticed Daisy not far from them and see how small she is, just like a child. But it turns out Sally just asked her assistant to be around those people who spread gossip. And periodically the assistant had to come to her mistress and tell everything she heard so that she knew what was happening in the palace. Daisy began to talk about how absolutely everyone was talking about the fact that the lady had a burnt face, or that she had such burns all over her body. Sally could not imagine that these rumors were growing to such an extent, because in fact, she only had one arm burned, and nothing else. And thanks to the doctor, he was able to convince everyone so easily that the mistress is really in a bad condition of the body, and she has almost all over her body. After Sally found out all the information she needed, she invited her assistant to sit down and have something to eat. There was just a small piece of cake left for her. It looked very appetizing and beautiful. It was very hard to refuse it. It was like a thank you for her help. But the girl didn't get her assistant to agree to this little surprise. And of course Daisy did not refuse such a yummy, and decided to accept this cake. She was very grateful for such a yummy, and did not think that such a thing was even possible. But everything looked very strange. Did Sally just want to take revenge on this girl for what she did to her? So especially the fact that she offered tea with the cake was even more suspicious after that situation with the burn. But fortunately, it didn't happen at all, although that situation looked like an opportunity to avenge what happened. In the meantime, the Duke returned home and asked how his beloved was feeling. He was told that she was now in her room and was resting after a hard day, and said that she would wait for her lover to have dinner together. It was strange because they had never had dinner before, although maybe it's for the best because you need to maintain the image of a mistress, and why not have dinner together? The Duke immediately ordered some delicious dinner to be prepared for him and his girlfriend, then went to her room to see her as soon as possible after all this time. Well, for some reason the girl decided to sleep while it was not yet evening. Is she really so tired? For some reason, he immediately thought that his wife had done something again, and because of her, Sally felt bad, and that's why she was sleeping so early. But it turned out that everything was fine with her, and she was just sleeping. Worries were in vain. Everything is fine with the girl. The Duke tried to approach her very quietly, so that she would in no case wake up and disturb her sleep, and wondering if I should wake her up to have dinner together, or maybe she is tired and will disturb her rest in vain for some dinner. Suddenly, he began to examine her face and noticed that because of the bangs, her appearance was not very attractive. Because without her she would look much better and more beautiful. He began to remove the bangs from her face to see how she looks without her. And at that moment she opens her eyes and notices that the Duke is touching her face. And all this time while she was sleeping, watching her. And after that, perhaps because she didn't fully wake up, she began to touch his ears and hair in response. Then stroke the skin of his cheeks and say how cute he is. And also the fact that his hair is so luxurious that you can look at it and admire it all the time.